"You can't park your boat here!" Milo Donovan froze, the words cutting through the calm of his morning like a knife. He stood on the porch of his family's cabin, the letter in his hand trembling as his blood began to boil. This wasn't just some casual complaint. It was a demand from the Aspen Ridge Estates Homeowners Association, HOA, and it was personal. Milo's eyes skimmed the page again, reading the demand in disbelief. Remove your boat from Pinewood Lake within 48 hours, or face a $500 fine for every day it remained. The HOA was also threatening to tow the boat at Milo's expense. The nerve, the absolute audacity. It was his family's land and they were trying to tell him how to use it. Milo's great-grandfather had fought to protect Pinewood Lake from commercial developers, a place where the family had lived and thrived for generations. Now, after years of corporate battles and a high-stress tech career, Milo had returned to find peace. But peace was the last thing he was going to get if these HOA bullies had their way. Without wasting another second, he stormed out of the cabin. The crisp mountain air hit his face, but it did nothing to cool his temper. This wasn't just about a boat. It was about something much bigger. Pinewood Lake wasn't just a piece of property. It was a living, breathing legacy. And no one, least of all the HOA, was going to take that from him. As he paced the dock, clenching the letter in his hand, he tried to calm his racing thoughts. How could they even think they had the right to dictate what he could do on his own? Property? Milo could hear the distant laughter of children from across the lake, likely from one of the HOA's little fishing events. His blood boiled even more. His family's lake had been used by these people without permission for years, and now they were trying to take it over, treating it like some community pool. If you've ever had to deal with an HOA trying to take control of your property, or if you've faced similar power plays, hit that like button, share this story, and subscribe for more. You're not alone in this fight, and trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. His phone buzzed. It was Jack Harris, his closest neighbor, and someone who understood the situation better than anyone. "Hey Milo, you got that lovely letter too, huh?" Jack said, his voice gruff but filled with knowing amusement. Milo filled him in on the details of the letter, and Jack's response was swift. "Damn, they're really pushing it now. They've been getting bolder, haven't they? I don't know what it is with these HOA folks, always thinking they run the whole damn neighborhood. Last time they came after me for my boat shed, said it was unsightly or some nonsense. Told them where to stick it. Haven't heard from them since." Milo's jaw tightened as Jack continued. "Look, I don't know how much you've heard, but those HOA folks have been using your lake for their tournaments for years without asking permission. They've been acting like they own the place. Heck, they even have a little club now, the Elite Anglers or something. It's all pretty ridiculous." The words hit Milo like a punch in the gut. He'd always assumed the lake was off limits, to everyone except his family. But now, it seemed like the HOA had taken it upon themselves to use it for their own purposes, treating his private property like a public resource. This was more than just about a boat. It was about trespassing, about deceit, and Milo was damn sure he wasn't going to stand for it. Milo spent the next few hours digging online. What he found made his blood boil. The Aspen Ridge Estates HOA website featured pictures from their annual fishing derby, with happy faces and bragging rights plastered all over photos of his lake. His own lake. They had even set up tents and barbecues, holding private events without asking a single time for permission. Milo's fingers shook as he clicked through the images. Elite Anglers Club, the HOA's private fishing group. There they were again, using his lake like it was part of their exclusive domain. The audacity was infuriating. And that's when Milo saw the phrase that made his blood run cold. Pinewood Lake, our community's crown jewel. Milo sat back in his chair, stunned. He'd been so busy adjusting to life away from the chaos of the tech world that he hadn't thought to check on what had been going on during his family's absence. The HOA had been using his lake for their little tournaments for years, and no one had bothered to ask. Not one person had the decency to reach out. And now, they were threatening him over something as simple as a boat. The injustice of it all hit him like a brick wall. His family's history with the lake, his grandfather's legacy, was being trampled by these entitled individuals who believed they had the right to do whatever they wanted. Well, not on his watch. Milo wasn't just going to sit back and let them steal his land. He was going to fight, but he knew this was bigger than he could handle alone. The HOA was powerful, with resources and connections that could destroy anyone who dared challenge them. But what Milo didn't know yet was that this fight would lead him straight into a web of corruption, deceit, and a conspiracy that reached far beyond the HOA. Milo paced the small living room of his cabin, the letter still in his hand as his mind raced. He had tried to keep his cool, tried to approach the situation rationally, but every time he thought about the HOA's demands, his blood boiled. This wasn't just about his boat. It was about something far deeper, something far more corrupt. He couldn't shake the feeling that the HOA was after more than just the boat. They were after Pinewood Lake itself. The next few days were a whirlwind of phone calls and emails. Milo reached out to an attorney, Claire West, a family friend who specialized in property rights. Claire had spent her life dealing with developers and land disputes, and Milo trusted her expertise. When she arrived at the cabin, it was clear this wasn't going to be an easy battle. "All right, Milo," Claire said after a quick look through the documents. "Your family's title to the lake is ironclad. They can't legally take it from you, but they can make your life hell while they try, and they're clearly not backing down." Milo felt a cold knot form in his stomach. He had suspected as much. The HOA wasn't just acting out of concern for aesthetics. They were trying to control everything. "You need to prepare yourself for more harassment," Claire continued, flipping through her notes. "They're likely going to escalate this, throw in some legal mumbo-jumbo to make it sound like they have the upper hand. They might even try to use the community's support to pressure you." Milo ran a hand through his hair. He knew Claire was right. He could already feel the weight of the HOA's threats pressing down on him. It wasn't just about one man or one letter. The HOA had been operating unchecked for years, and Milo had become the target of their arrogance. That evening, Milo sat outside, watching the sun dip behind the mountains, and thought about what he had to lose. Pinewood Lake wasn't just his. It was his family's heritage. His grandfather had fought hard to keep it safe, and now Milo would have to fight even harder. It wasn't just about the boat anymore. This was a fight for his legacy, for the land that had shaped his life. As Milo stewed over his options, he received a visit from Jack Harris, his closest neighbor. The old man had lived in Aspen Ridge for decades and had seen the HOA's tactics firsthand. Jack's face was drawn, his eyes dark with frustration as he stepped onto the porch. "They're getting worse, Milo," Jack said quietly, taking a seat across from him. "They started using your lake for fishing tournaments years ago. But now they're trying to make it their own personal playground. They've got big plans, and you're in the way." Milo felt his heart drop into his stomach. "What do you mean, big plans?" Jack leaned in closer, lowering his voice. "They've been talking about a luxury resort, condos, a marina, everything they can squeeze out of that land. They're trying to buy up everything they can, including Pinewood Lake. I've heard them talking about it for months. I'm telling you, they don't want your boat. They want that lake. They're planning on turning it into a damn country club." Milo sat back in his chair, the weight of Jack's words sinking in. He had suspected something bigger was at play, but hearing it out loud confirmed his worst fears. This wasn't just about property lines and boats. It was about money, power, and greed. The HOA had been using his lake for years, and now they had bigger plans that didn't include him. The next day, Milo spent hours poring over every document he could find. He reached out to local government offices, searching for records, anything that might give him a better understanding of the HOA's plans. And then he found it, a small buried section in a city zoning document. There it was, plain as day, Maple Ridge Estates development plan, resort and commercial expansion on Pinewood Lake. They had been planning this for years, but it wasn't just a resort. The plan included a golf course, luxury condos, and an exclusive marina. Everything that would destroy the very essence of Pinewood Lake. Milo's blood ran cold as he stared at the documents. The HOA had never once asked for his permission. They had been sneaking around, operating under the assumption that the lake was fair game. It was clear now. They didn't just want the boat gone. They wanted to control everything. Milo knew the battle was far from over, and it was about to get more personal. Armed with this newfound knowledge, Milo was prepared to take action. He wasn't going to sit back and let these people destroy his family's legacy. But as he made plans to confront the HOA, he realized something even more terrifying. The HOA wasn't just pushing to control the lake. They were preparing to break the law to make their vision a reality. Milo was about to uncover a deep web of corruption, and he had no idea just how far these people would go. Milo couldn't sit back any longer. The discoveries he'd made, the whispered conversations, and the blatant disregard for his rights had all led to this moment. He knew the HOA wasn't just going to roll over, but he wasn't going to be the one to back down. It was time to confront Lance Whitley and the HOA head-on. Armed with the evidence he'd gathered, zoning documents, photographs, and his family's unchallenged legal title to the lake, Milo decided to attend the next HOA meeting. It was a bold move, but one that felt necessary. He couldn't let them continue to operate under the assumption that the land was theirs for the taking. The meeting was held at the Maple Ridge Estates Community Center, a place Milo had driven by countless times but had never entered. The building was ostentatious, designed to look like a small-scale luxury hotel with marble floors, brass chandeliers, and a fountain in the front. It reeked of people who were desperate to project authority and importance. Milo stood at the doctor for a moment, feeling out of place in his faded jeans and flannel shirt, but then pushed forward. This was his fight, and he wasn't going to let the HOA's false airs of grandeur intimidate him. He walked into the room, where about 20 people were seated, some engrossed in conversations, others scrolling through their phones. Milo noticed Lance Whitley sitting at the head of the room, his perfectly coiffed hair and smug expression giving him the appearance of a man who thought he could control everything. Milo's blood started to boil, but he kept his cool. As the meeting started, Lance droned on about trivial matters, lawn maintenance, mailbox styles, and the importance of following community standards. When the topic of the lake came up, Milo couldn't hold back anymore. "Excuse me, Lance," Milo said, his voice calm but firm. "Can you clarify something for me? I'm curious about the HOA's claim to the lake. You've been referring to it as community property, but as far as I know, Pinewood Lake is privately owned by the Sullivan family. It has been since 1953. There was a noticeable ripple in the room. Some of the attendees looked at each other, confused. Lance's smile tightened, and he cleared his throat. "The lake is a community resource," he said, trying to maintain composure. "We've been managing it for years. Our development plan—" Milo didn't let him finish. "Wait, I'm sorry, but I have a question. You're saying that the HOA manages the lake, yet according to the property deeds, the lake is owned by my family and has been for decades. Could you explain that? Because to me, it looks like you've been managing something that doesn't belong to you." The room went silent. Lance's eyes narrowed. "Milo, there are arrangements in place that you don't understand. We've been—" "Arrangements?" Milo interrupted, his voice rising just enough to command attention. "You've been using my family's lake for years without permission. You've held fishing tournaments, set up docks, and hosted private events on my property without so much as asking. And now, you're threatening to fine me for keeping my boat on my own land." I'm not here for a lesson in HOA arrangements, Lance. I'm here because you've been stealing from me, and it ends now. Lance's face went red. He gripped the edges of the podium, his knuckles white. I think you're mistaken, Milo. The HOA has been managing the lake for the benefit of the entire community. And I think it's time you reconsider your approach. We don't take kindly to people who disrupt our plans. Milo stood up, his heart pounding. Disrupt your plans? Your plans? You're not even supposed to be making plans for this lake. This land. This lake. It's mine. You can't just keep pretending you have some legal right to it. You're not only stealing from me, you're manipulating everyone in this community. Milo's words were met with a murmur of surprise from the residents in the room. Some of them, Milo could tell, had no idea what was really happening. Others were clearly uneasy. Lance, for the first time, was visibly rattled. He had expected Milo to be intimidated, to back down in front of the community leaders. Instead, Milo had taken the fight to him, publicly calling out his lies. That's enough, Lance said, his voice low and dangerous. You've had your say, but I suggest you tread carefully from here on out. The HOA doesn't take threats lightly, Milo. I'm sure we can find a way to resolve this, if you're willing to cooperate. Milo could see it then, the mask slipping. The real Lance Whitley was nothing but a bully, someone who had gotten used to people cowering before him, letting him control everything. Milo wasn't one of those people. I'm not interested in cooperating with you, Lance. I'm interested in protecting what's mine, Milo replied coldly. And if you want to keep pretending you have a claim to Pinewood Lake, we're going to make this public. Because I will expose everything you've been hiding, your development plans, your shady dealings, and your unlawful actions. You don't get to control this lake, not anymore. The room was silent now, all eyes on Lance and Milo. For a moment, Lance didn't speak, his eyes flicking nervously around the room. He recovered quickly, though, adjusting his posture and plastering a smile on his face. Very well, Milo, he said, his voice dripping with condescension. If you want to take this further, so be it. But know this, you're outnumbered. You won't win this battle. Milo's gaze never left Lance's. We'll see about that. Milo had taken his first stand against Lance and the HOA, but the battle was far from over. Lance may have made his threats, but Milo wasn't intimidated. He had the evidence, and now he had the support of a few community members who had finally seen the truth. But just as he thought he might be turning the tide, he received a call that would change everything. Someone from inside the HOA had come forward with explosive information, and it was going to make this fight even more dangerous. Part 4. The Turn, Reversal of Fortune. Milo couldn't shake the feeling that he had just made a huge target of himself. The confrontation with Lance at the HOA meeting had been public, bold, and brash, but it had also put him directly in the crosshairs of a much larger operation. Lance was not a man who took humiliation lightly, and Milo had no illusions that this would be the end of it. That night, Milo sat at the kitchen table, the papers spread out in front of him. Claire had gone over everything once again, confirming that his family's claim to the lake was ironclad, but still, the weight of the situation loomed over him. The development plans, the illegal use of the lake, and the HOA's audacity to challenge him were only the beginning. Just as he was about to take a deep breath and clear his head, his phone buzzed. It was an unexpected call. Ray Delgado, his neighbor, and the closest ally he had in Aspen Ridge. Ray had been the one to warn him about the HOA's intentions early on, and Milo wasn't sure if he was ready for more bad news. Milo, you're not gonna believe this. Ray's voice crackled through the line. Milo's pulse quickened. What's going on? There's someone inside the HOA, someone who knows everything. They contacted me just now, said they've been watching this whole thing unfold. They're ready to help you, but you need to meet them in person. It's big, Milo. This could be the break you've been waiting for. Milo was taken aback. Who is it? What do they want? Ray hesitated. I don't know their name yet, but they've got documents, recordings, the works. And if it's legit, It could bring down the entire HOA leadership. They're scared, Milo. The kind of scared that makes people flip. Milo felt a surge of hope and anxiety. This could be the key to finally putting the HOA in its place, but it also meant he was getting deeper into dangerous territory. Who was? Willing to risk everything to take down Lance Whitley and his cronies? "I'll meet them," Milo said firmly. "Where?" "Behind the old mill at the edge of town, tomorrow morning at 9. Don't bring anyone else. They'll know you're coming." Milo hung up, feeling the weight of the decision settle over him. He knew the stakes had just risen. If the person Ray was speaking to was legitimate, it could be the evidence that tipped the scales in his favor. But Milo also knew that there was no turning back. If the HOA found out who had leaked this information, there was no telling how far they'd go to silence it. The next morning, Milo drove to the old mill, the morning fog still clinging to the trees as he parked in the dirt lot. His heart raced as he got out of the car and scanned the area. It was secluded here, isolated. If something went wrong, no one would hear him scream. Then, out of the mist, a figure emerged. It was a woman, dressed in a hoodie with the hood pulled up, face partially obscured by shadows. She stopped just a few feet from him, eyeing him cautiously. "You're Milo?" she asked, her voice low but sharp. "That's me," he replied, stepping closer. "Are you the one with the information?" The woman nodded, glancing around before pulling a thick folder from under her jacket. "This isn't just about your boat or your lake. It's about everything they've been hiding. The HOA's been planning this expansion for years. But what you don't know is how deep the corruption goes." Milo's mind raced. "How deep?" She handed him the folder, opening it to reveal documents and photos. There were meeting minutes, confidential contracts, and bank statements that showed significant amounts of money flowing between the HOA board members and a series of shell companies that Milo didn't recognize at first. But then, he saw it. Maple Ridge Properties LLC, the very same development firm that had been in talks to build the luxury resort on Pinewood Lake. It was all right there. Proof that the HOA wasn't just trying to manage the lake. They were conspiring to sell it off to developers behind the scenes. "This goes beyond greed, Milo," the woman continued. "Lance Whitley and his board members have been siphoning money from the HOA's funds for years. They've been laundering it through fake development projects, trying to make it look like they're improving the community, when really, they've been lining their pockets the entire time." Milo felt a cold shiver run down his spine. This was more than just a land dispute. It was a financial web of lies, deceit, and manipulation. The HOA wasn't just a collection of overreaching neighbors. It was a criminal organization. "You have to take this to the authorities," the woman urged. "But be careful. Lance is dangerous. He's got connections in the local government, the sheriff's office. He'll stop at nothing to protect his empire." Milo's hands shook as he sifted through the evidence. It was overwhelming. The thought of taking it to the authorities felt like a leap of faith, but he knew it was his only shot. He had to expose the HOA for what they were, not just for his sake, but for the community. "Thank you," Milo said, his voice steady despite the chaos swirling inside him. "How do I know I can trust you?" The woman didn't hesitate. "You don't. But I'm telling you, I'm doing this because what they're doing isn't right. You're the one who can stop them. Don't waste it." With that, she turned and walked away, disappearing into the fog. Milo stood there for a moment, the weight of what he now knew pressing down on him. He couldn't back out now. The battle for Pinewood Lake had just taken a dangerous turn, and it wasn't just about boats or property anymore. It was about exposing the truth, no matter the cost. Milo was ready to fight back, but Lance was already preparing his next move. With the evidence now in his hands, Milo knew that the real war was just beginning. But as he gathered his allies and prepared to take this fight public, he realized one terrifying truth. The HOA's power was far-reaching, and Lance Whitley wasn't about to let this go without a brutal retaliation. Would Milo's plan succeed, Or would the dark forces behind the HOA crush him before he could even get started? Milo sat in his cabin, staring at the documents in front of him. The evidence was undeniable: financial records, photographs, and meeting minutes that exposed the HOA's corruption and fraudulent plans to seize Pinewood Lake for a luxury resort. This wasn't just about his boat anymore. It was about his family's legacy, his grandfather's work, and the future of the land that had been in his family for generations. But as the realization hit him that this was bigger than a simple land dispute, a wave of anxiety washed over him. The truth was out, but the battle was far from over. When Milo reached out to the local news, Sarah Lynn, the reporter who had already been covering the HOA's Overreach, took his story and ran with it. Within hours, the front page of the local newspaper screamed, "HOA Scandal. Secrets of Pinewood Lake Exposed." The article outlined the illegal activities, the fraudulent development plans, and the manipulative tactics Lance Whitley had been using to line his pockets at the expense of the community. The reaction was immediate. Social media exploded. Residents who had once been loyal to the HOA began to demand answers, and the pressure on the corrupt HOA board was mounting. The community, long manipulated by Lance, now had a chance to take back control. But Lance Whitley wasn't going down quietly. He immediately issued threats, including a defamation lawsuit against Milo and Sarah, and tried to rally his allies. It was clear that this wasn't just about legal maneuvering anymore. It was a battle for power. Lance began using his connections to try and discredit Milo, threatening to ruin him in any way possible. Milo's pulse quickened, but he didn't flinch. He had one thing Lance didn't: the truth. And truth, Milo knew, was the most powerful weapon in the world. Amidst the chaos, an unexpected ally emerged. A former political supporter of Lance's, a local councilman, came forward with critical information. He revealed that Lance had used his influence to manipulate zoning laws, pushing the development project forward without any legal authority. The councilman's confession sent shockwaves through the community, and suddenly the public was demanding answers. Lance had overplayed his hand, and now it was unraveling. As the investigation into the HOA's finances deepened, the pressure on Lance grew unbearable. The county stepped in, launching a formal inquiry into the HOA's actions. The story broke wide, and within days, the majority of the board members resigned. Lance's empire was crumbling. The final blow came when the local sheriff, pressured by the mounting public outcry and the overwhelming evidence, announced that they would investigate Lance for fraud. Lance Whitley was arrested, his power and influence shattered. But Milo wasn't done yet. He stood firm, refusing to settle for a bribe offered by Lance in a last-ditch attempt to keep his power. Milo could have taken the money and walked away, but that wasn't why he had fought so hard. He'd fought for justice, for the truth, and for the preservation of Pinewood Lake. "I'm not here for money," he told Lance coldly. "I'm here to make sure you never hurt anyone again." With Lance's arrest, the HOA was dismantled, and the corrupt practices that had been going on for years came to an end. The community rallied, and a new board was formed, one that was transparent, fair, and dedicated to preserving the natural beauty of Pinewood Lake. The development plans for the resort were scrapped, and instead, the land was designated as a conservation area. Milo's family's legacy was safe. The lake was no longer at risk of being turned into a luxury playground for the rich. It was once again a place for the community to enjoy, just as his grandfather had intended. As Milo sat by the lake, watching the water shimmer under the setting sun, he thought of his grandfather's words, "Water is life." It had been a hard-fought battle, but Milo had done what was right. He had protected his family's heritage and fought back against corruption. Now the lake was healthier, cleaner, and more protected than it had been in years. And Milo could finally breathe easy, knowing the fight wasn't just about the lake. It was about standing up for what was right, no matter the cost. If you've ever faced a corrupt system or fought for what was right, Milo's story might hit close to home. Like, share, and comment below with your own experiences or thoughts on standing up to powerful forces. This is a fight we can all relate to, one that proves no matter how big the opponent, truth and justice always prevail. Stay tuned for more stories that inspire change. And remember, the battle isn't over. There's always more work to be done.